Mountain passes control empires. 25 kilometers of rocky valley, one fortified choke point. On May 22, 1499, 6,300 mountain fighters from the 3 leagues of the Grisons marched into the Val Mystère, knowing they were outnumbered 2 to 1. 12,000 Habsburg troops waited behind wooden walls bristling with cannons. King Maximilian I himself was riding hard from the Netherlands with reinforcements. The window was closing. This was the Swabian War's Alpine theater. Habsburg Austria wanted the Umbrail Pass. The pass meant control of the route from Tyrol straight into Milan. The 3 leagues stood in the way. What happened next at Calvin Gorge didn't just stop an army, it ended Habsburg expansion into the mountains forever. The year is 1499. Europe's about to flip. The Holy Roman Empire under Emperor Maximilian I is trying to centralize power, consolidate, tax, control. The old Swiss Confederacy and their mountain allies and the Grisons refuse. They won't join the Swabian League formed in 1488. They won't pay the common penny tax imposed in 1495. They trade with France. They hire themselves out as mercenaries to anyone who pays. They've already beaten Charles the Bold of Burgundy in 1476 and 1477. Now Maximilian wants them brought to heel. The spark comes in January 1499. Habsburg troops raid the Benedictine convent of St. John at Mystère in the Val Mystère Valley, plunder it. The raid violates centuries of disputed jurisdiction between the bishopric of Chur and the counts of Tyrol. The 3 leagues call for Swiss help. War spreads fast. By February, battles erupt from Lake Constance to the Alps. The Swiss win it hard on February 20th near the Rhine estuary. They win at Bruderholz on March 22nd outside Basel. They win at Schwaderlo on April 11th, where 1,500 Swiss rout 5,000 Swabians, leaving 80 drowned in Lake Constance. They win at Frastans on April 20th in Vorarlberg. Every battle follows the same pattern. Swiss pike squares and halberdiers hit harder, move faster, hold formation better. Vinschgau Valley in Tyrol. Mountains wall it in. Sesvenegruppe range to the north. Ortler Alps to the south. 3 topographic levels. The valley narrows at its eastern exit where it meets the Vinschgau. That narrow point is called Calvin, perfect defensive ground. By April 1499, Maximilian orders a massive force assembled. Troops from the Swabian League, Tyrolean soldiers, Italian mercenaries. They gather at the villages of Mals and Glurns in the Vinschgau, 12,000 men. At Calvin they build a letzi. That's a fortified wooden barrier blocking the entire valley exit. Heavy logs, rock foundations, cannon emplacements. 2,000 men manning the fortifications directly, another 1,200 covering the flanks. Castle Rotund at Taufers overlooking the approach, fully manned. 200 soldiers guarding the Marengo Bridge behind the letzi. The rest camp in villages. Maximilian's strategy is control the pass, force submission, march through to the Engadine. The 3 leagues are in trouble. Their territory is threatened. Their allies, the Swiss, are fighting on multiple fronts. Time is against them. His father, Heinrich II, serves the Prince Bishop of Chur. Fontana becomes bailiff of Riom, holds the position in 1473, 1481 through 84, 1492, 1496 through 97, gets appointed captain of the Bishop Prince's castle in the Val Venosta. When the Habsburgs build the letzi at Calvin, Fontana's seat at Fürstenberg Castle in Bergheis sits in Habsburg-controlled territory. He abandons it, rides to Chur, demands troops. The 3 leagues hesitate. They're exhausted, resources stretched. But Fontana keeps pushing. The Umbrail Pass cannot fall. If it falls, the entire Grisons falls. Finally, they assemble. 6,300 men gather at Zuoz. They know Maximilian is coming with more troops. Intelligence says he's maybe a week out, maybe less. They march to the Val Mystère. Arrive at Mystère village, face the letzi. It's an impossible position. Frontal assault means walking into concentrated cannon fire. The defenders have the high ground, perfect fields of fire, endless ammunition. Wilhelm Rink and Hans von Lombris, 2 of the 3 leagues' commanders, propose a plan. Split the force, half attack from the front to pin the defenders, half bypass the letzi entirely, circle north over the mountains. Come down behind the Habsburgs in the Vinschgau, hit them from the rear while they're focused forward. 1999 and 2020, specifically examining Swiss military capabilities at the end of the 15th century, and from C. and F. Jecklins' Der Anteil Graubündens am Schwabenkrieg, published in Davos in 1899, which compiles nearly every known primary source on the Battle of Calvin, including contemporary chroniclers like Willibald Pirkheimer, who wrote De Bello Suitense Sive Helvetico in 1526, says a participant, and Simon Lemnius, who documented Fontana's final words shortly before his death in 1550. Now, back to the information. They scramble up mountain slopes in the dark, rocky terrain, no trails. just instinct and local knowledge. They're mountain men, farmers, herders. They know these peaks. By morning, they're above the Vinschgau Valley looking down. The remaining force, 3,300 to 4,300 men, stays at Mustère, ready to attack the Letzi head-on. Dawn comes. Rink and von Lombris's flanking force descends into the Vinschgau. Habsburg scouts spot them. Panic spreads. A rumor ignites through the Habsburg camp. 30,000 Swiss are coming down the mountain, not 2,000. 30,000. The number is insane, impossible. But fear doesn't do math. Habsburg troops stationed in the Vinschgau villages break and run. They flee toward the Marengo Bridge. The 200 soldiers guarding the bridge see their own men running and rally. They hold the bridge. Rink and von Lombris can't cross. They're stuck. The frontal assault begins at the Letzi. The defenders see the Swiss coming. Cannon fire, disciplined volleys. The attackers charge with pikes and halberds. They hit the wooden walls, get driven back. Charge again, get driven back again. Heavy losses. The commanders are screaming at their men, threatening to kill anyone who retreats. Fontana is everywhere. Dietrich Freuler from Zurich technically commands, but he hesitates. Leads a flanking attack up the mountain slopes south of the barrier. It's not on any plan, just instinct. Local terrain knowledge, a narrow goat path or a steep scramble. His men follow. They get above the southern edge of the Letzi. Now the defenders are taking fire from three sides. Front, rear from Rink's force that finally pushed past the bridge, and south from Fontana's mountain climb. The wooden walls can't defend all angles. Habsburg foot soldiers panic. They bolt. Knights try to hold. Armor and training versus momentum and numbers. The Swiss break through. Combat collapses into a rout. Habsburg soldiers flee through the Vinschgau Valley. Many drown in the mountain rivers trying to escape. The Rom River runs fast in May. Snowmelt. Cold. Armor drags them under. Pirkheimer, fighting with the Habsburgs as commander of Nuremberg troops, watches the flight. His account is bitter. He writes the Swiss gave no quarter. Hunted down fleeing men, executed wounded. The victorious 3 Leagues troops rampage for 3 days, burn every house in the Vinschgau Valley, kill all men over age 12. The bounty is staggering. 300 small cannons, 8 large cannons, wagons of supplies, armor, weapons, food. They retreat over the Foreign Pass on May 25th, carrying everything. Benedict Fontana does not retreat with them. He falls during the assault, mortally wounded. The accounts vary slightly, but the core is consistent. A gunshot or crossbow bolt to the abdomen. He holds the wound with his left hand, keeps his sword raised with his right, turns to his men, shouts his final words, then collapses. He's 49 years old. He rides hard to Glurns, arrives May 29th, sees the devastation, the charred villages, finds 38 hostages from the Engadin Valley being held, orders them executed at Meran in retaliation. In June, his troops ravage the Engadin Valley, burn villages up to Samadan, but Swiss reinforcements are coming. Troops from Bern, Zurich, Uri, and Glarus reach Davos on June 18th. Maximilian's forces clear out. The Swabian League refuses to send more men to the Grisons. They don't care about Alpine passes. They care about defending Swabia. Maximilian returns to Lake Constance. The war continues in the north, but Calvin is the turning point in the southern theater. Habsburg expansion into the Grisons is over. The Habsburgs lost approximately 4,000 men killed or drowned. The Swiss and Grisons lost approximately 2,000. A casualty rate that high should break any force. But the 3 Leagues didn't break. They held. The broader Swabian War racks up staggering totals. Contemporary estimates put 20,000 troops killed on both sides in the first 6 months. 200 villages burned. Tens of thousands of civilians dead from starvation and displacement. Plague breaks out in the ravaged regions. Chroniclers report wild animals attacking the living because they've developed a taste for human flesh from so many unburied corpses. The Swiss win every major battle. Hard. Bruderholz, Schwaderloh, Frastanz, Calvin, Dornick. 6 victories in rapid succession from February to July. At Schwaderloh, on April 11th, 1500, Swiss rout 5,000 Swabians. Swabian losses top 1,000. 130 just from Constance. 80 drown in Lake Constance fleeing. At Dornick, on July 22nd, the Swiss win the final decisive battle. Maximilian's military high commander falls in the fighting. That's when the emperor knows it's over. September 22nd, 1499, Peace of Basel. The treaty grants the Swiss Confederacy far-reaching independence from the empire, exempts them from imperial jurisdiction, exempts them from imperial taxes, de facto acknowledges them as a separate political entity. The Grisons are included. Habsburg territorial claims dropped. The status quo ante bellum officially maintained, but everyone knows the reality. The Swiss and the Grisons won. They're independent now in everything but name. Formal recognition comes later in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia, but Basel is the moment. Impenetrable to cavalry, difficult for infantry. The halberd combines an axe blade, a spike, and a hook on a 2-meter pole. It can punch through plate armor, pull knights off horses, crush skulls. The Swiss fight in dense blocks, 3 main formations. Vorhut, the vanguard. Gewalthaufen, the main body. Nachhut, the rear guard. They drill constantly, move as one unit, advance, retreat, wheel, all while maintaining cohesion. They don't break. At Calvin, the terrain negates much of the advantage. The Letzi is designed to stop pike formations, but the flanking maneuver changes everything. Rink and von Lombris bypass the fortifications entirely. Fontana's improvised mountain assault adds a third angle. The Swiss aren't using formation tactics at Calvin, they're using terrain and speed and aggression. Mountain warfare, not line warfare. By 1499, handguns are appearing. Hakenbuchse, arquebus, early matchlock designs, slow to reload. Inaccurate past 50 meters, but terrifying. Loud. Produce smoke. Psychological weapons. The Letzi at Calvin mounts many cannons. Contemporary sources say the 3 leagues capture 300 small cannons and 8 large cannons after the battle. That's an enormous artillery train. Suggests the Habsburgs brought serious firepower, but cannons in 1499 are still cumbersome. Slow rate of fire, 4 to 6 shots per hour for large pieces. They need stable ground. The moment the Swiss break the Letzi line, the guns become liabilities. Can't traverse fast enough. Can't depress low enough for close combat. The crews abandon them and run. Artillery dominance collapses into artillery capture. The Swiss learn that lesson. In later battles of the Swabian War, they bring their own guns, capture more. By Dornick in July, the Swiss have substantial artillery support. The balance is shifting. Infantry squares still win battles, but combined arms are emerging. Pike, halberd, crossbow, handgun, cannon, integrated. Northern front along Lake Constance and the Hochrhein. Western front in Alsace and the Sundgau. Each theater has different terrain, different strategic goals, different commanders. The Eastern theater is about Alpine passes. Control the Umbrail Pass, and you control the Tyrol-Milan route. Maximilian needs it for his Italian ambitions. His second marriage to Bianca Maria Sforza of Milan in 1493 puts him in direct opposition to France over Milan. The Italian wars are heating up. The Valmistaire and the Umbrail Pass are strategic keys. The Umbrail Pass sits at 2,501 meters elevation, highest paved mountain pass in Switzerland, even today. In 1499, it's a mule track, narrow, treacherous, but direct. From the upper Vinschgau through Val Müstair to Bormio and the Valtellina, Venice to Milan, salt from the south, wine from the north. Merchants pay tolls. Whoever controls the pass controls the revenue. The northern theater is about Rhine crossings and trade routes, Basel, Constance, Schaffhausen. These cities control toll revenues. The Swiss want those revenues. The Swabian League wants them. Thurgau is contested ground. Habsburg feudal overlordship versus Swiss common lordship. In 1495, a Supreme Court ruling favors Habsburg jurisdiction. The Swiss ignore it. Garrison Ermetingen with 400 men by April 1499. Maximilian calls that rebellion. The Swiss call it pragmatism. The Rhine is Europe's main commercial artery, north to south. Goods flowing, money flowing. Tolls generating revenue. Constance sits on Lake Constance where the Rhine exits. Perfect choke point. The city is Swabian League territory. The Swiss raid it repeatedly, burn villages on the southern shore. Capture cannons. The Swabians retaliate, raid Swiss villages. It's tit-for-tat violence escalating. France doesn't field troops in the Swabian War directly, too politically complicated. But money talks. Swiss raids into Sundgau in May 1499 are brutal. Villages burned, castles sacked, Augsburg, Randeck. Some sites like Göttingen are spared after paying ransoms. It's organized plunder. The Swiss need to fund the war. Looting provides capital, keeps troops motivated. Every soldier gets a share. Commanders get larger shares. It's incentivized violence. The Swabian League resents being pulled into a war they see as serving Habsburg interests more than imperial interests. That resentment fractures cohesion. Knights distrust foot soldiers. The knights are armored cavalry, trained from childhood, expensive equipment, horses worth fortunes. They see war as honor. The foot soldiers are peasants and townsmen. Conscripts are low-paid mercenaries. They see war as survival or profit. When knights order charges and foot soldiers don't follow, battles collapse. At Schwaderlo, the Swabian foot soldiers break immediately when the Swiss hit them. The knights fight alone for a few minutes, then flee. At Frastenz, similar pattern. Counts from Württemberg disagree with counts from Bavaria over strategy. Bavaria wants to defend its own borders. Württemberg wants to attack Swiss territory. Neither gets priority. Resources split, efforts diluted. Urban militias from Constance clash with mercenaries from Italy. The Constance militia is defending their city and trade interests. The Italian mercenaries are hired by Maximilian. They don't care about constants, they care about pay. When pay is late, they threaten to leave. Maximilian scrambles to keep them in the field. Command structure is fragmented, multiple leaders, multiple agendas. No unified command until Maximilian himself arrives in late April. By then, the Swiss have already won 4 major battles. What if France doesn't deliver promised support? By March, after Bruderholz, Baron commits. Their troops arrive, make a difference. But the hesitation costs time. Fribourg sends 2,000, Lucerne 3,000, Zurich 4,500, Uri 800, Unterwalden 600, Schwitz 2,400. The Grisons themselves field 5,000, Zug 400, Glarus 500. Saint. Gallen, Appenzell, and Thurgau combined send 6,000, Schaffhausen 400, Solothurn 1,800, Wallace 1,000. Vegas tallies 34,400 total Swiss strength across all fronts. Another anonymous contemporary report estimates 20,800 at one specific time. The numbers fluctuate. Militia mobilize, fight, demobilize, go home for planting season or harvest, then remobilize. It's not a standing army, but when committed, they're coordinated. 10 cantons fielding men, unified purpose, defend Swiss independence, deny Habsburg control. They form around the 14th and 15th centuries, free peasants and minor nobility resisting feudal overlords, similar origin to the Swiss. They sign a military alliance with the old Swiss Confederacy in 1497-98. That alliance brings them into the Swabian War when the Habsburgs raid Mustayr. The 3 leagues consolidate further in 1524, eventually become the Canton of Grisons, but that's later. In 1499, they're independent but vulnerable. They're mountain people, Romansh speaking in many valleys, small populations, rugged terrain, perfect for defense, terrible for projecting power. They can hold passes, but they can't hold open ground. At Calvin, they're fighting on home ground. Benedict Fontana knows every ridge, every stream, every goat path. That knowledge makes the flanking maneuver possible. Local commanders. Local troops, local terrain. The Habsburgs are importing soldiers from Italy and Swabia and Tyrol. Strangers to the mountains. They don't know the land. That's a fatal disadvantage. This script is researched using detailed primary sources, including Willibald Pirkheimer's first-hand account, De Bello Suitense Saive Helvetico, written in 1526, which provides the Habsburg perspective on the battle, and the Luzener Chronic, compiled by Diebold Schilling between 1511 and 1513, which includes detailed illustrations and accounts of all major battles in the Swabian War. Sources also include the comprehensive study by Joseph Riedmann and others in Calvin, 1499 to 1999, papers from a conference held in Glorenza, Italy, in September 1999, commemorating the 500th anniversary of the battle. Now back to the information. 3 days of killing in the Vinschgau Valley. All men over 12 killed. That's genocide by modern standards. Medieval warfare by 15th century standards. The Swiss have a policy. No prisoners. Or very few. Before battles, troops swear oaths. Anyone who deserts gets killed by their own comrades. Anyone who takes prisoners for ransom instead of killing gets killed. Ferocity is doctrine. A chronicler writes, "In the capture of prisoners there is more humanity to be found among Turks and Bohemians than among the Swiss." That's a contemporary observation, not modern judgment. The Swiss earn a reputation, vicious, unstoppable. After the battle at Constance, women and clergy collect bodies from the battlefield. The sight is so horrific it's recorded in multiple chronicles. The policy works. Enemies fear them. That fear creates battlefield advantage. Opponents break earlier, run faster, surrender positions without fighting. The psychological impact is calculated. The civilian toll is harder to quantify. 200 villages burned in 6 months across 3 theaters. Tens of thousands displaced. Starvation, disease, plague, wild animals. The chronicles mention animals attacking the living repeatedly. That detail appears in multiple independent sources. It's not exaggeration, it's reality. Mass death creates mass graves. Inadequate. Bodies lie exposed, scavengers feast, wolves, bears, boars. They lose fear of humans. Start hunting. Survivors huddle in fortified towns. Fields go unplanted. Harvests fail. Famine. The Swabian War lasts 7 months, but the recovery takes years. His death is dramatic. Wounded, but still fighting. Shouting defiance, leading from the front. His last words are perfect. Hots, Grisons, elegias uma non plus. Today, the Grisons, or nevermore. It's short, quotable, defiant, patriotic. Exactly what legend requires. The reality is messier. Fontana is a minor noble, bishop's bailiff, not a grand military commander. He's competent, experienced, brave. But the victory at Calvin is a team effort. Rink and von Lombris design the flanking maneuver. Freuler commands the Zurich contingent. Fontana makes one crucial decision: the Southern Mountain Assault. That decision breaks the stalemate. He pays for it with his life. Simon Lemnius writes down Fontana's story around 1550. Lemnius is the first historian to record the final words. Later, historians amplify the story. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Fontana is a full-blown national hero for the Grisons. Comparable to William Tell, Arnold von Winkelried, the myth overtakes the man. In 1903, a statue goes up in Chur, Fontana pointing his sword. The pose is dramatic, heroic. The inscription immortalizes the quote. In 1999, the 500th anniversary of Calvin, the Valmuster and the Vinchgau hold a joint commemoration, not glorifying war, emphasizing reconciliation. 5 centuries later, the descendants of combatants are neighbors. The statue remains, the story remains, the myth serves a purpose. It defines Grison's identity, freedom, independence, resistance to outside power. Whether that's entirely accurate to 1499 is less important than what it means in 1903 or 1999 or today. The strategic aftermath of Calvin is immediate. Maximilian abandons the southern theater. His forces retreat from the Grisons. The Swabian League refuses to reinforce. They're fighting on the northern and western fronts, losing there too. By July, Maximilian is desperate. He shifts focus to Lake Constance, attempts a final offensive, assembles another large force, plans to strike through Thurgau directly into Swiss territory. The offensive launches in mid-July, meets stiff resistance immediately. Swiss defenders have prepared positions, artillery emplacements overlooking key crossing points. When Maximilian's army approaches, 80 unmanned Swiss cannons open fire from fortified positions near Constance. The Swiss troops have actually left to fight at Dornach, but the artillery is pre-positioned. The guns fire effectively enough to throw Maximilian's army into confusion. They withdraw. It fails. At Dornach on July 22nd, the Swiss win decisively. This is the final major battle of the war. Maximilian's military high commander, Heinrich von Fürstenberg, dies in the battle, cut down in close combat. His death breaks Swabian morale. He was the unifying figure, respected by both knights and foot soldiers. With him gone, the command structure splinters. Maximilian's own military reputation suffers. He's the king. He's supposed to win. He's losing. Badly, repeatedly. The Italian wars are waiting. Milan is waiting. He can't afford to be bogged down in Switzerland. Peace talks begin. Intermediaries meet in Basel. Swiss representatives, Habsburg representatives, Swabian League representatives. The 3 leagues send their own delegation. Negotiations take weeks. The Swiss start from a position of strength. They've won every major battle. They control the territories they claim. They have French gold backing them. The Habsburgs need to end the war. The Treaty of Basel is signed September 22nd, 1499. The terms are favorable to the Swiss and the Grisons. No new taxes imposed by the Empire. No imperial jurisdiction over Swiss internal affairs. Territorial integrity of both the Swiss Confederacy and the 3 leagues respected. All Habsburg territorial claims to Swiss and Grisons lands formally dropped. The Perpetual Accord of 1474 between the Habsburgs and Swiss is reaffirmed. The Swiss and Grisons operate as sovereign entities. They mint their own coins, negotiate their own treaties, field their own armies, collect their own taxes. They're independent in every practical sense. Formal legal recognition waits until 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia ending the 30 Years' War. But Basel in 1499 is the moment sovereignty is won. The Swabian League dissolves over the following decades. The League was always fragile, built on temporary alliances. Member states had conflicting interests. After the disaster of 1499, nobody wants to field troops again. The League exists on paper until 1534 when it formally disbands. The Swiss model spreads: republican governance, militia-based defense, refusal of feudal obligations. It's radical for 1500. It's modern. The Swiss Confederacy becomes a model studied across Europe. Machiavelli writes about them, notes their military effectiveness, their republican structures. Other regions attempt similar systems. The Dutch Republic in the late 1500s draws inspiration. The English parliamentary system watches Swiss development. American colonists in the 1700s reference Swiss precedents. The idea that citizens can govern themselves, defend themselves, and reject monarchical or imperial authority, that idea gains traction, slowly, over centuries. But 1499 is a data point, proof that it works, that republics can defeat empires. The Habsburg expansion halts, not forever. They'll try again, but not in the mountains, not in the Grisons. Charles V, Maximilian's grandson, fights the Swiss again at Marignano in 1515. Different war, different context. The Swiss lose that one. Their reputation for invincibility cracks, but the passes stay controlled. The Graysons maintains independence. The three leagues consolidate. In 1524, they formalize their perpetual alliance. The Canton of Graysons emerges as a stable political entity. By 1550, the Graysons is a recognized power in the Alps, controls key passes, mediates disputes, trades with Venice, Milan, Germany, Switzerland. By 1648, the Treaty of Westphalia formalizes Swiss independence from the Holy Roman Empire. What began at Calvin in 1499 concludes at Westphalia in 1648. 149 years of de facto independence becoming de jure recognition. The Swiss celebrate. The Graysons celebrate. Europe acknowledges what everyone already knew. A metal barrel may be 1 meter long, a wooden stock, a serpentine mechanism holding a slow match. Pull the trigger lever, the match drops into the flash pan, ignites the priming powder, fires the main charge. Effective range, maybe 50 to 80 meters. Accuracy is poor. A skilled archer with a crossbow is more effective. But the Hakenbuchse is loud, produces thick, white smoke, psychologically terrifying. And it requires less training than a crossbow. A crossbow takes years to master. Draw weight, aiming, maintenance. The Hakenbuchse can be taught in weeks. Point, aim roughly, pull trigger. The Swiss start incorporating handgunners into their pike formations. Not many, maybe 10% of troops by 1500, but enough to matter. At Calvin, the focus is still pikes and halberds and crossbows, but handguns appear in the sources. A few mentions of Büchsenschützen in the Graysons forces, gunners. They provide harassment fire, shoot at Habsburg defenders on the Letzi walls, force them to keep their heads down while the pikemen advance. Cannons are multiplying everywhere. The Letzi at Calvin mounts many cannons. Contemporary sources say the three leagues capture 300 small cannons and 8 large cannons after the battle. That's an enormous artillery train. Suggests the Habsburgs brought serious firepower. Small cannons might be falconet or serpentine designs, barrels less than 1 meter long, firing balls of 1 to 2 kilograms, mounted on wheeled carriages or fixed positions. Rate of fire, maybe 6 to 8 shots per hour if the crew is good. Large cannons are probably Carton or Culverin types. Barrels 2 to 3 meters long, firing balls of 10 to 20 kilograms. Rate of fire, maybe 3 to 4 shots per hour. Require teams of 8 to 12 men to operate. Artillery dominance collapses into artillery capture. The Swiss learn that lesson. In later battles of the Swabian War, they bring their own guns, capture more. By Dornick in July, the Swiss have substantial artillery support deployed around the battlefield. The balance is shifting. Infantry squares still win battles, but combined arms are emerging: pike, halberd, crossbow, handgun, cannon integrated into a single tactical system. By the Italian Wars in the early 1500s, this integration is standard. Spanish tercios perfect it. Dense pike corps with shot sleeves, arquebusiers on the flanks and corners of the formation, artillery supporting from range. The Swiss try to adapt, but they're doctrinally committed to shock tactics, aggressive pike charges that works against medieval cavalry. It doesn't work as well against combined arms defenses with prepared artillery. At Marignano in 1515, French artillery and coordinated pike and shot formations break the Swiss charges. 20,000 Swiss casualties in 2 days, their worst defeat. The invincibility myth ends, but they remain formidable. Still feared, still hired as mercenaries across Europe. The Vatican's Swiss Guard forms in 1506, serves to this day. 519 years later. The reputation built at Calvin and Dornick carries through centuries. Fortifications are adapting too. The Letzi at Calvin represents medieval thinking, a wooden barrier, strong but static. Vertical walls, perfect for cannons to batter, perfect for flanking maneuvers to bypass. Within 50 years, the Letzi design is obsolete. Trace Italiani fortifications emerge in Italy in the early 1500s. Low profile, angled bastions, thick earthworks behind stone facing, moats, glacis, killing zones, designed specifically to resist cannon fire and prevent easy scaling. The Swiss bypass the Letzi with maneuver, but later defenders won't have that option. Trace d'Italien forts dominate approach routes, force attackers into choke points, turn sieges into months-long starvation contests. The pike square remains effective into the 1600s. Gustavus Adolphus uses Swedish pike and shot formations in the 30 Years' War, but by 1650 the bayonet appears, a blade that mounts on a musket barrel. Now every musketeer is also a pikeman. The dedicated pike becomes redundant. By 1700, pikes disappear from European battlefields. 300 years of dominance, ended by a simple innovation. But in 1499, the pike is king. And the Swiss and Graysons at Calvin prove it. Historical analysis, archaeological evidence, primary source compilations. The Benedictine convent of St. John at Mustère, raided in January 1499, survives. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. The frescoes inside date to the Carolingian period. The raid in 1499 causes damage but not destruction. The convent rebuilds, continues. 900 years of continuous monastic life. The Valmustère Valley itself is designated a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve in 2010. Tourism, hiking, skiing. The landscape is preserved, the history is marketed. You can visit the battlefield, walk the ground, stand at the site of the Letzi, look up at the mountains where Rink and von Lombris descended, look south at the slopes where Fontana climbed. Plaques mark locations, interpretive signs explain the battle. The villages of Mals and Glurns in the Vinschgau are rebuilt. They're charming today. Medieval cores, tourism economies, no visible scars from 1499, 526 years of peace. But the memory remains. 8 large cannons captured, 3 days of rampage, all men over 12 in the Vinschgau killed, 38 hostages executed in retaliation at Meran, 20,000 total dead in the 7-month war, 200 villages burned, tens of thousands of civilians dead. September 22nd Treaty. Those numbers are not abstractions. Each number is people, bodies, families destroyed, villages erased. But those numbers also secured independence for the Swiss Confederacy and the Three Leagues. The cost was paid in blood. The return was sovereignty. Was it worth it? That's not a historical question. That's a moral question. The people of 1499 made their choice. They chose to fight. They won. In 1999, scholars re-examined the battlefield at Calvin. Ground-penetrating radar, metal detection surveys, limited excavations. They find mass graves, clustered on the approach to the former Letzi site. Bones show battle trauma, cut marks from bladed weapons, crushed skulls from blunt force, projectile wounds. The graves contain dozens of bodies, maybe more than 100. Impossible to extract all without major excavation. The evidence matches the chronicles. High casualty rates, brutal close combat. The graves are left undisturbed, reburied, marked, a memorial erected. The Vinschgau Valley produces archival evidence too. Parish records from the early 1500s. Population collapses in multiple villages after 1499. Farms abandoned. Tax rolls drop. Recovery takes decades. A document from 1512 lists claims for compensation. Widows. Orphans. Dispossessed landowners. The Duchy of Tyrol pays some claims, not all. The war's cost echoes for generations. And in Chur, the archives hold a letter, dated June the 1st, 1501, 2 years after Calvin. It's from the Bishop of Chur to the Council of the Three Leagues. The letter mentions the need to maintain the mountain passes, to garrison key points, to prevent future Habsburg incursions. The letter specifically names the Valmustère and the Umbrail Pass. It says these passes were secured by the blood of brave men. It says they must not be given up. The letter is bureaucratic, administrative, but it reveals the strategic thinking. Calvin wasn't just a battle, it was a statement. The mountains are ours, the passes are ours. The Grisons is ours. That claim stands today. Canton Grisons, Swiss sovereignty. Secured in 1499 by 6,300 men who climbed mountains in the dark, charged wooden walls under cannon fire, and won.